evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, September 15th Parks Recreation Greenway Advisory Board meeting. First up, I'd like to just take a moment to say that I need to leave early tonight. I'll be leaving at 7, and so Beverly will be taking over. So if you see me slide out, that's why. And so because of that, I want to go ahead and say this is my last meeting as chair. And it's been a pleasure, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity the past 2 years. It's been a great opportunity to have, so thank you all. And I look forward to the elections tonight to see who's up next. Also, should we, Giovanna, do this now? Yes, okay. We have 2 members who are going to be rolling off tonight, and one of them is not here yet, Dave Toms, and the other is Dr. Love, and sadly it's her last meeting, and she won't be able to join us anymore. So we wanted to go ahead and give you these plaques as our token of thanks for your time. Appreciation for your time on the Parks Board. It's been a pleasure serving with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And same for you, Dave, wherever you are. Oh. Get a photo.
All right. It's the iPhone, but it'll work. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the Raleigh Youth Council report. Oh, I'm sorry. We have public comment. I skipped right over that. Is there anyone here for? We do have. Is there anyone here for public comment? Yes. Come forward, please. And if you would state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes for comment.
Hello. Oh. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
My name is Al Reeder, and I live 5612 Harrington Grove Drive, up in 27613. I have 2 things I want to address real quick. The first is with the Devereaux Meadows project. Any remaining structures from the old baseball field, I like to have commemorated with some type of plaque or some other type of object of some kind to acknowledge the baseball field was there at some point. I understand, I was talking to one of the gentlemen here earlier, that it's not possible to actually rebuild a baseball field there anymore due to the flooding. But if something could be there too, I understand there's some kind of wall there that's still standing, if that could be like a plaque there on the wall or something of that nature. Second thing is, I live up way past North 540, but still within the city limits, like right on the border of Durham. And I feel like for the many years I've lived there, there hasn't been any real focus on getting us any Greenway system trails up that way. So there is a small Greenway trail in the Leesville Community Park in central Leesville, and there's obviously, of course, Lake Lynn, but anything past those 2, like especially anything north of 540 and anything going north of the Leesville Community Park, there's no Greenway trails whatsoever. There's a very poorly made bike lane on Leesville Road near 540, and that's it. So for people to be able to actually run and bike up there, there's really no options. So I think in the future, if that could be done in consideration, we'd really enjoy and appreciate a Greenway trail of some sort up that way.
Great, thank you for your comments. I'll respond a little bit to that while you're here, just to say that regarding the baseball field, I know that there's already been talk about some sort of commemoration for that, so that's definitely in the works in some form. But please stay involved in the public process to keep an eye on it. And then with the Greenway Trail, and Stephen could speak to this more specifically, there is a Greenway Trail segment in the bond for somewhere in North Raleigh, and you could be more specific about if it's anywhere near where he's talking about.
It's northeast Raleigh. I believe you said you live in northwest Raleigh?
Very northwest Raleigh.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we are going to build Aaronsbrook Park, so there hasn't been a park developed in over 10 years in the Briar Creek area, and it's a part of the bond consideration. There is Aaronsbrook Neighborhood Park, which will have walking trails, but not a Greenway connection.
The long-term goal I'd love to have, because I know there's Greenway connections going down to Crabtree Creek Trail from Lake Lynn over time. So something that would connect to that would be like ideal for us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the report from the Raleigh Youth Council. Thank you, Carmen.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Carmen Miles with Team Programs. I am representing the Executive Board from the Raleigh Youth Council tonight. Unfortunately, Cordelia had an emergency, so she could not make it. I just want to give you guys a quick update on what the council has been doing over the last couple of months. Over the summer, the Executive Board met to plan out the school year of the different activities and events that they would participate in this year. Starting out in August, the council hosted an open house at Laurel Hills Community Center to welcome in any new members or to talk to parents or anyone who had interest in joining the council. We started our first meeting. I'm not sure if you all are aware, but Laurel Hills is under construction for renovation, so we will be meeting at Kiwanis Park. Every second and fourth Monday. We had our first meeting this past Monday with teens coming in and just getting to know each other for the first meeting. We did a community service this past week already. Last night, actually, they were at the food bank for about 2 hours last night bagging apples, so that was really exciting. We're starting to do drives each month. This month, they were participating in a teacher drive where we saw a lot of success for community centers offering book bag drives for students. We thought that it would be an opportunity to help out some of the Wake County teachers, so we are collecting items for a couple teachers that we have reached out to provide them some support. They'll be participating in a highway cleanup this month also. Again, they partner with the State Youth Council to kind of take care of some of our local roads. Our next meeting will be a college night where we'll have representation come in and speak to the teens about applying for college and different opportunities and scholarships and things of that nature. And also we'll have some returning students from the council come to speak with the council about opportunities and things that they have learned once they've gotten, once they've entered college. In October, we will have a Halloween specialized recreation dance that we've been working on to host. It'll be October 22nd at Millbrook Exchange from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We will have more updates in October about that dance as well. And October, we will be participating in a coat drive, so we will be collecting coats to donate to Courtney T. Johnson for their coat giveaway in November. So we're excited about all the things that the council has coming up, and we are, we'll be here next month. Hopefully the teens will be back.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Carmen, the October 22nd dance, is that in conjunction with what Christina's been working on, the Welcome to Raleigh series?
Yes.
This is their stuff that I am tagging on and saying, oh, let me help with you, anything I can. We are going to do a photo booth there, and that's what we will be helping with and getting some backdrops and making sure that that looks fun for them. But they are doing all of the work. They are awesome.
Good. I just wanted to do a plug for you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Happy evening.
Up next, Lindsay, we have the nomination committee report, I guess.
Yes, I am the nomination committee. The receiving end of the nomination committee. So I do have in my hand the ballots for tonight. We do have one nominee for chair, that's Beverly Clark, and we have 4 nominees for vice chair. We have Gregory Etheridge, Van Fletcher, Chris Pereira, and myself. So here's how it's going to work. You're going to take one, pass it down, and then we will collect them in the latter part of the agenda at item, my tablet's dead, I'm reading on my phone. A later item, we will be collecting that and rolling that down to Giovanna.
So my understanding is actually vote now, send it to Giovanna so she can tally it.
Yes.
During the meeting, and then later we'll get the results, which I might miss, so you'll have to text me.
I thought it was somewhere later. Yes, it is. It's 11.6. It's hard to read all this, though. Anyways.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There you go.
I'll come around and collect them so you don't have to pass them, so we can stay anonymous. Next item on the agenda is the Devereaux Meadow Park renaming update from the survey results. Gary.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Pull up
evening.
the presentation. So,
Our monitor's not on.
so based upon the discussions that you all had at your last meeting, we put together a survey based upon the 3 recommended new names that you have for the Devereaux Meadow site. So the recommendations that you all came up with were Gateway Park, Robinson Greenberg Park, Smoky Hollow Park, and then we put together a public survey that we put on publicinput.com that ran from August 18th through September 9th. Within that survey, we did give people who participated in the survey a kind of a little brief reason for why those names were chosen. So I'll just start with Gateway Park briefly. One reason is the site's highly visible feature along Capitol Boulevard. And then also in the 2012 Capitol Boulevard study, which was one of the first publications that really talked about transforming the site into a park, discussed it as a significant and very deliberate gateway element as one arrives into downtown from the north. And then the gateway into the city theme has been repeated by respondents throughout the concept design process. The second name, Robertson Greenberg Park, named after 2 former baseball players who played for a time in Raleigh, albeit quite brief. Greenberg was a Jewish athlete who entered into the major league but did play for 1 year with the Raleigh Capitals. And then in 1947, Jackie Robertson became the first African-American major league player, and in October of 1950, as part of his all-star team, they played an exhibition game here against the Raleigh Tigers, and that game did take place at the Devereaux Meadow Stadium. The third name, Smoky Hollow Park, is named after a neighborhood that existed from the late 1800s to the 1950s. The actual neighborhood itself was just south of the Devereaux Meadow site on the other side of Peace Street, just south of Peace Street. It was an interracial working class neighborhood. And it's understood that the name Smoky probably came from the fact that the smoke emitted from the mills and the train engines, which were active at that time, and that neighborhood was developed primarily for the workers in those mills and on the rail yards. And in the 1950s, the area was redeveloped and many of the residents forced out. So, based upon the survey, I have 2 different graphs to show you here. The highest ranking one was Smoky Hollow Park, followed by Gateway Park, and then Robinson Greenway Park. To get into a little bit more detail here, we had a total of 1,383 respondents, which is pretty good. So just to kind of overview of the numbers right there. So the number that's on the far right, the one starting with 1,110, that is actually the number of people who actually voted for that particular name, no matter what the rank was. Okay, and then the percentages on the left-hand side is that number divided by the total number of respondents. But what's most critical is to understand is the ranking, which is a statistical type of formula within the survey. Essentially, the closer the result is to 1, the most higher ranked it is. Just to give you an idea, if one person ranked an option as their first choice and another person ranked that option as their third choice, the average ranking would be 2. So what you're seeing right there is the average rankings. So obviously the highest ranking was Smoky Hollow, followed by Gateway Park, and then Robertson Greenberg Park. So that's pretty much my presentation for tonight, just to give you all the results of that. And
Great, thank
All right.
you. Anyone have any questions or comments for Gary? Could you remind us what's next for us in this process?
My understanding is that next month you all will be voting on the actual name.
Okay.
So-
So between now and then, could another one come forward, or are we kind of down to this, this is it now, yeah.
I think at this
Okay.
point,
Okay.
yes.
So at this point, hopefully next month, we vote on one of those three options based upon the feedback that we received.
Right, right. And today I did email Giovanna with the actual raw data from the survey, the spreadsheet information, and then kind of like the report. So if anybody's interested in that, she can forward that on to you all.
Okay, great, thank you.
Right.
Great. Any questions from anybody? Thoughts, surprises? No?
Well, just the comment that while we'll make a recommendation, council
Make the final decision.
will make the final decision and can name it anything they want.
That's right. Yep.
Right, right. And so after, if you all do vote on it next month, then it will then go to council in November following the election.
So if we feel strongly about it, you might want to show up and speak toward it as a citizen. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And then I think you're up next again on the agenda, Gary, with the concept plan. Yeah, you don't need to leave. Yep.
Okay. It is an action item for tonight.
Yep,
Yes.
that's right. So
Okay.
this next one is an action item. So you all remember that Gary has presented to us a couple times on the concept plan and in lots of detail, and now is our time to go ahead and accept and approve this item, if we so choose, to send it forward to City Council for their approval of the concept plan.
I make a motion that we send the concept forward to City Council.
I second.
Great.
Or we
okay.
both do.
Marcia with a second from Lindsay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you.
Congratulations, Gary.
Thank you.
We won't make you do that.
Up next, we have a presentation on the Accessibility Parks Grant for Carolee Park. All right.
Much shorter than Gary.
I've
Hi,
been there.
everyone. I might be a new face for some of you all. My name's Lauren Kabrick. I am the relatively new park planning specialist with the city. I've been here since February, so this is my first presentation to Parks Board, so yay, exciting. And I'm here today just to give you all a brief overview of a grant that we are considering pursuing for Carolee Park. This is just an informational presentation to let you all know about it and ensure that there is support for us pursuing this grant. So, with that, all right, so a little overview. The Accessibility for Parks Grant is a new grant program here in North Carolina. The North Carolina General Assembly approved a one-time fund of $10 million this year, and it's administered through the North Carolina Division of Parks and Recreation and the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. And this funding is intended to be used for projects that meet the unique needs of children or veterans with disabilities. The funding per project can go up to $500,000, but the really cool thing to us about this grant is that it has a 5-to-1 match. So instead of the normal 1-to-1 or even 2-to-1 that you see, this is 5-to-1. So for example, if the city puts in $60,000, it's matched at $300,000, which is really awesome. So for a little bit of context, Carolee Park is a very small neighborhood park. Some of you might not be familiar with it. It is located here in the center of your screen off of Maywood Avenue. This is South Raleigh. For some context, Eliza Pool Park is nearby, and on the right side of the screen, the big green open space. This parcel is city-owned and is currently being developed as affordable housing. So this is a neighborhood that's growing and a neighborhood that has a lot of needs for these kinds of recreation services. So in this area, it's also very diverse demographically. We're about a third of residents are white, about a third are black, and a third are of Hispanic origin or Latinx. And then another key factor in this area is that it's got a high renter population. So about 60% of units in this area are renter occupied. So to give you a little bit of further context, this park is quite old. It's been around since the 1970s, and it's very outdated, as you can see from these photos. So the park itself is located about 4 feet above the grade of the road, and the only way to access this park is through this wooden set of stairs that you see here. So it's not at all accessible, ADA or otherwise. Another interesting feature of this park is it has a transit stop immediately in front of it, but this transit stop has no sidewalk to it. It doesn't have any sort of landing pad or furniture for folks. And now for the park itself, the playground that you can see is very small, very outdated. It still has a sand surface, so again, not accessible at all. The basketball court is in need of some resurfacing and repair. It's got a small picnic area and then a large open play lawn. So this is a park, again, it's a neighborhood park, but it has hundreds of residents that are within that half-a-mile walk. So it does get a lot of use, but it is very outdated and in need of some TLC. So what we would like to do with this grant money would be to do some just general renovations of this park to make it both more accessible and to have a unique focus on universal design elements. So oftentimes when you think of an accessible park, we're thinking of it from purely physical accessibility, something with a large footprint that has ramps so that wheelchairs can access it. But accessibility and universal design can encompass a lot more than that. So we're hoping that this project can be kind of a model for other North Carolina communities and parks of what you can do within a small footprint. So there's a couple logistical things that we want to do, including adding a ramp so that everyone can actually physically access this space. Do some general improvements of the site, adding some shade structures and tree plantings, things like that. We want to resurface the basketball court and also add in some adjustable height basketball hoops so that people are able to, make it fit their abilities and needs. And then one of the bigger aspects would be to do a complete renovation of this playground. So that would include doing the poured-in-place rubberized surfacing so that it's physically accessible, putting in new equipment that has different accessible elements. But the thing that we're really excited about is implementing sensory play. So that's an aspect of universal design that is often overlooked when you're thinking about accessible spaces again. But it's something that meets the needs of children with a wide range of interests, abilities, different hypersensitivities, etc. So we want to look at adding auditory elements, musical elements to the park, things that are visually stimulating, different tactile elements. And then another feature that doesn't exist at a lot of parks is implementing communication boards. So that'll let kids who are nonverbal be able to communicate with other kids, maybe kids who don't speak English as their first language, maybe kids that are deaf. So it's a way to have kind of that inclusive play element. So that's the kind of overview of what we are imagining that we can do with this grant. Here we have just the preliminary, very rough budget that we'll be proposing in this grant. So $180,000 would go towards that overall playground renovation, both the surfacing and the new equipment. $60,000 would be spent towards that accessible ramp so everyone can actually get to the park. And as part of that, we're also proposing to put in a concrete pad at the bus stop so that people aren't just waiting on the street when they're waiting for the bus. We'd also do the basketball court renovation, so resurfacing and repairing the court. $10,000 would go towards plantings and site furnishings, including furnishings for the bus stop so people can actually sit and wait for the bus instead of having to stand there. And then we've got an additional $50,000 for kind of the design process. So overall, that equates to $360,000, which $300,000 of that would be grant funding and $60,000 would be city matched, which we do have this money available through some residual accessibility funding. So with that, that's really all the information that I wanted to share with you all today. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
This is a proposal?
Yes, yes. So this grant is due November 1st if we proceed with applying for it. So really today is just kind of that temperature check to make sure you all are supportive of that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Do you have the estimate for how much it would cost to put an ADA accessible shelter for the bus? So that
I do not have that cost estimate. Unfortunately, that's kind of getting a little bit outside of the scope of what this grant is intended for, because it is intended for playground renovations, upfits, new facilities. But we have been in talks with the transportation department and have gotten their support for putting in a pad. So, there's always potential for partnership there if we were to be awarded this grant funding.
Lindsay.
I have a few questions. What age range is the playground currently targeted, and then what would this sounds like a major upgrade with the sensory and all the different aspects of it. What age range would it then be inclusive of? I have a few questions, so that's the first.
Yeah, so I believe the equipment currently is more geared towards that 2 to 5 age range. And of course, we don't have this design finalized by any means. We are still just working on the grant application itself. So it's a little still in flux as to what age range we would necessarily target. It most likely would stay with that 2 to 5 age range, since that's what's out there and that's what gets a lot of use. Older kids tend to gravitate towards the basketball court on site and playing soccer and things in that open field space. But again, we're very early on in this process.
Well, that makes sense, and that sounds good, especially 90% of brain development happens by the age of 3, so it's very relevant there. Will the sand be replaced with mulch?
No, so what we are looking at doing is the poured-in-place rubberized surfacing.
Okay.
That's kind of more of the industry standard at this point, because it's safer for people, and then it also allows for better mobility.
Definitely. No, I'm a new connoisseur of strollers, so anything is better than sand for strollers, I can tell you that much. My next question is, what is the timeline? So, let's say you apply for this grant by the deadline, November 1st, and you knock it out of the park, and then you get it. How long till we see this then come around and be a reality for that community? Because it just sounds so exciting.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate that. We're really excited about it too. So this grant, like you said, November 1st is the deadline. It's anticipated that early spring 2023 would be when we find out if we're awarded it. And then the grant has a 3-year cycle after that. So you have 3 years to actually get the project in the ground. Most likely we would get it in the ground much earlier than that, just given that this is a very small site. It's only about an acre. So, but some point within the next 3 years.
Okay. I mean, I was quite impressed with how fantastic Fisher Street Park came together so quickly. So I have faith that this can happen. Last question: how many parks in the system are? This is, as you emphasize, quite dated, and then the accessibility factor is very concerning, because we want our system to be as inclusive as possible. So how many parks in the system are you aware that are behind where we need to be in terms of accessibility and meeting the standard?
That is a good question that Stephen might be able to speak to better than I.
I won't make you try to answer that one, I promise. Great presentation, Lauren. We'll bring that back to you. Okay. We have had a really good push since the 2014 bond in improving quite a few dated playgrounds, and we can bring in some more granular data on which ones are more accessible. So we have it split a lot of different ways, but not in front of us. Yep.
Thank you. And great presentation.
I'll also add that was a big reason why this particular park was of interest to us, because particularly the fact that you can only access it via the stairs, that is highly unusual as far as parks in our system are concerned. And this site is within the Dix Edge study area, so it's within the area where downtown South will be impacting, where we're seeing a lot of gentrification, things of that nature. So we wanted to make sure we are investing in a park within this area.
Can you give us the number of all of the parks, and then how many have had updates since 2014?
Parks or playgrounds?
Oh, sorry, playgrounds.
Playgrounds, yeah, we definitely have that. We have a replacement schedule.
Okay.
And like I said, probably the last 7 to 10 years, it's been one of the biggest pushes because we built a lot of them in the 80s. They have about a 20-year lifespan, some shorter based on use, but we have that data readily available. Yep.
I also like to speak on as well. For everybody on the board, this is a great grant program, let alone a great project. As a consultant for the city, I can't speak a lot on it because, but with the timeline, Lindsay and everybody else, so they have, today was the last day for them to get their application to me to do a technical review. So I have till now all the way to the deadline for November the 1st to review their application and consult with them to figure out if this is the great fit for this grant. So November the 1st is the deadline, and then March of 2023 is when we will determine who will get funded through this AFP grant. So, but this is a great project and a great program, and that's all I'm gonna say. Grant program. So.
What could I just ask one last thing to piggyback on Chris's comment and what you mentioned about the partnership with transportation for the bus stop? Is there any way to the money you mentioned that would be the match from the city? Is that all from the Parks Department? And it's the accessibility money you mentioned?
Yes.
Is that within PRCR?
So, yes.
Okay.
So the $60,000 match that we currently have earmarked, that is all coming from an accessibility fund within parks.
So is there any additional funding that could come from whoever does the bus stops? Is that transit, I guess?
Yeah, Lauren was great to point out that right away you show a bus stop like that to transit and they're like, ooh, we got to do something, especially if we are investing. Lauren and Shashin, she is a wizard, and she really is, and she already has feelers out for private donors and so forth. So I'm knocking on wood that we can grow that budget a little bit with some private philanthropy.
Great. Thank you. Yep. All right. Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Great. And next up, we're going to get an update on the Parks Bond. TJ.
Good evening, everybody. Great to see you all.
Good evening.
It has been a while. Too long, if you ask me. But I think we'll be spending a lot of time together over the next couple months, especially once this bond gets approved. So I'm going to provide a brief overview today of what we're looking at with the upcoming Parks Bond and run through the 20 or so projects that we have proposed for funding. So this is coming up. November 8th is Election Day. Of course, early voting is going to be starting in October, and it's my understanding that provisional ballots, absentee ballots, are out already. So some folks you may know in your networks might already be filling out ballots. So make sure you're talking to people about the Parks Bond. First few bullet points here really highlight the themes that we're emphasizing with this particular bond rollout. Right? We know over the last few years, this city, this country, the world has been through a lot. Right? We came out of the pandemic with a renewed appreciation for parks and greenways and open space, an understanding that they're not just luxuries, nice to have items, right, but really essential infrastructure and essential to the health and well-being of our community. And so City Council, the City of Raleigh has decided to put forth this referendum at a $275 million level, which is obviously significant, especially when you compare it to some of our previous parks bonds, the latest being in 2014 at $90 million. Here we are now going for more than 3 times that much. So this really has the opportunity to be a true game changer for the City of Raleigh, for our park system. We're really, these projects focus on promoting equity and access needs throughout the system. That means we're going to be investing in the communities that are going to benefit most from enhanced access to green space, opportunities for safe outdoor recreation, and the communities that rely most on the programs and the services that we as a city provide. There's a balance that we need to strike here between developing new parks in underserved areas of the city and reinvesting in outdated spaces, or again, in those communities that maybe have been historically underinvested over time. So the projects we'll run through tonight, we'll give a little snapshot of how we're going to accomplish all of that. There's a list here of the 20 or so projects that we'll be doing, and I'll run through each of these one at a time. But first, just to give a visual for you, this is a map of the distribution of the projects all throughout the city. So again, we have a mix of new construction, rehabilitation projects, greenway improvements, and a few planning projects as well that are going to touch every geographic area of the city, so we can make sure that everybody who's voting for this bond understands that they're going to receive something in their neighborhood, in their part of the city, something that they're going to be able to appreciate and experience every day. First, I'll run through a few of the Greenway projects that we have included. The Big Branch Greenway connector is the first item here. So this runs up through the North Hills East area. This is an opportunity for us to look at connecting from the Crabtree Creek. There's a transportation project looking at a bridge over 440 in this area. And there's also a lot of new private development going on along this corridor, where we're already working with real estate development companies and developers who are already building out sections of this Greenway Trail for us. And so we're going to be able to leverage some of that public-private partnership to even further enhance Greenway development on that corridor. We've got $4 million set aside for the Lake Lynn Trail. The loop trail we have around Lake Lynn, along with Shelley Lake and Lake Johnson, are some of our most popular Greenway trails. If you're ever out there around sunset, you know you're going to see hundreds of people. Very, very well-used trail. So we're making sure that we're upfitting all of that asphalt, all of the boardwalk out there on the west side of that loop. Two more Greenway projects here. One is going to be a feasibility and preliminary design study done along the Marsh Creek corridor. This is another one that's going to extend Greenway access up from the Crabtree Creek into northern areas of Raleigh that don't currently have Greenway access. So this corridor goes through Hill Street Park and Brentwood Park up towards Spring Forest Road. Again, though, this is going to be that kind of design and planning process. So we can look at that corridor and see what it's going to take to get the trail built out there long term. We're going to be doing improvements to the Mine Creek Greenway. This is the section of Greenway Trail that runs south of Shelley Lake. So if you come off of the Shelley Lake Loop Trail and you head south toward downtown, toward the Crabtree Creek, that's the section that we'll be improving here. Lots of opportunity there to make new connections into the neighborhoods that trail passes through. A lot of improvements we want to see out there. Big line item here is a $10 million project for improvements along the Walnut Creek Greenway. This is one of the sections of our Greenway system that we hear a lot about in terms of flooding, of litter, of safety. So there's a lot of improvements we're going to be able to make out here along the Walnut Creek corridor. And finally, we have $5 million identified for neighborhood and community connections. And so those are, again, going to be those small-scale projects that we think have a big impact in terms of providing people with walkable access to nearby parks and greenway trails, opening up new park access points, and new greenway trailheads all throughout the city. We have $6.75 million at Biltmore Hills to develop tennis courts. So this will be a real destination tennis facility down in southeast Raleigh, a project that has been in the works and in discussion for a long time, and so this funding will get us across the finish line there. You're all familiar at this point with the park currently known, but soon to change, Devereaux Meadows. We have $11.5 million, and the funding here is going to focus on that site remediation, the stream restoration, really doing the first phase of implementation of that master plan. And again, the city's investment here is going to help us communicate and give us a lot of leverage when we're working with a lot of private developers who are coming in that area to make sure that they understand the investment that the city is putting into this, and we hope that the private investment will follow. At Dix Park, we've got a number of projects included in the bond. A little over $40 million for the Gibson Play Plaza. Of course, this is going to be the flagship playground for the city of Raleigh, and we sure hope one of the best in the entire country. So this is a significant investment that's, again, going to be supplemented with around $20 million in private investment through the Conservancy and other philanthropic sources. And we'll be doing improvements to the Dix Edge along Lake Wheeler Road. So this will be bike ped improvements, really looking at that park edge, upfitting everything, and creating some new, really grand entrances into Dix Park along that part of its boundary. Aaronsbrook Park, we talked about a little bit earlier this evening from the gentleman who left public comment. So this is one where we did the master plan through the last Parks Bond, the 2014 Parks Bond, and now this is the funding to implement the first phase of that master plan. So we'll get a new dog park out there, which we all know is in high demand, new playground, shelter, restrooms. That'll be a really nice park in an area of the city that currently doesn't have one anywhere nearby. So that's really going to do a lot to improve our level of service up in Northwest Raleigh. Green Road is going to see a significant facelift. We're going to do a new central activity plaza, improvements for a comfort station, picnic shelter, and other kind of site amenity improvements across the Green Road Park campus. John Chavis Memorial Park is going to be another one of the flagship projects of this Parks Bond. We've got over $50 million going into phase 2 implementation of the John Chavis Memorial Park master plan. This is where we're going to accomplish that heritage plaza. We're going to improve upon and expand upon the historic interpretive displays, making sure the community understands and can engage with the storied history of this site, and construction of a new indoor-outdoor aquatic center, which again is going to be a flagship destination in our park system, providing that kind of experience you really can't get anywhere else in the city. We've got a little over $12 million identified for the South Park Heritage Walk, as well as improvements to the Top Green Community Center in the area. So this area of Southeast Raleigh is really going to see some significant investment if this bond does pass. We have 2 new parks planned for the Parks Bond as well, one at the Kyle Drive Park site and one at Neuse River Park, who you may have heard referred to as the Leonard Tract. So Kyle Drive is up off of the Capitol Boulevard, Lewisburg Road corridor. Again, that's an area of the city that from an equity perspective is a high priority for us to invest in, and somewhere that we don't have any developed parks, especially when you talk about walkable and bikeable destinations. So the $9 million here for Kyle Drive is going to give us enough to do the master planning and then move immediately into implementation and construction of the park. So we've really tried to separate out these projects so we're not doing planning one time and then not getting to development until 5-7 years later. For this bond package, we wanted to make sure that we were able to deliver on expectations and the plans that we develop with the community right away. Neuse River Park, this is up just downstream of Falls Dam. We've got around 80 acres out there right now, so this has the opportunity to become a real kind of adventure outdoor recreation destination. Access to the river, the Neuse River Greenway Trail runs right through this property. Going to be a really exciting project and hopefully a destination that synergizes with Forest Ridge Park and Annie Louise Wilkerson, all the nature preserves we have up in this area. Again, really great project, and that'll be a brand new park for the system. We've got reinvestments going into significant rehabilitation and redevelopment of a few of our community centers, some of our most popular community centers in the city. Method Community Center is one, $14.75 million there is going to go toward the community center as well as the Pioneer Building. Sertoma Art Center is going to see significant reinvestment as well. Again, one of the most popular kind of cultural resource destinations we have in the city at the Art Center there. We've also got $2 million going to Strickland and Leesville Road parks. These, again, are both up in that northwest Raleigh area, so we're going to get some permanent restroom facilities built out there and do what we can for some additional outdoor amenities as well, just to enhance those parks. Tarboro Community Center is another big ticket line item on the Parks Bond. Almost $30 million is going to go toward a complete redevelopment of the Tarboro Park campus. So that'll include the community center, outdoor recreation spaces, as well as St. Monica's Teen Center, which is going to do a lot to help bolster our youth outreach in this area of the city along Tarboro Road and that New Bern Avenue corridor. So all together, that summarizes the Parks Bond package for us. We know that the tax impact for this sort of thing, a $275 million bond, is going to be a question on people's mind. And so to summarize that, it is when you hear a 4-cent tax increase, what that means is that it's 4 cents per every $100 of assessed value on your home. So that's actually 0.04%. So for the median home value of around $250,000, you can expect to see an annual tax increase of about $100. This is a presentation that we'll be giving in partnership with folks from the Chamber of Commerce, the Dix Park Conservancy, other park advocates that we're working with. We're going to be going out to community groups and neighborhood groups, other special interest groups throughout the city giving this presentation. If you're involved in any of that, you'll see from the city staff side, right, we're not allowed necessarily to advocate. We're not encourage people to vote one way or another in any election. So we'll be there. Members of staff, we've got a few dozen signed up. That'll be all around the city. We'll be there to give the kind of the facts and figures and the rundown like this. And then we'll have our folks from our advocacy organizations out there to add a little more flavor and really push the vote. I'll close with that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, TJ. Yeah, Kara.
So you'll be going out talking about this. Will this presentation also be available online to just share out with people?
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Right, Lindsay?
I hate to ask this, but what happens if the bond doesn't pass?
Good question. I'll let Stephen respond too, but I'll tell you this. We
Write this down because I don't always be with you.
With our Penny for Parks campaign, right? We had the dedicated tax last year, so that gives us a steady stream of CIP funding, and there are a lot of projects that we have and are ready to accomplish for that. We're pushing a lot more work, working with planning and development, a new urban projects group that they have up and running that I think is really going to revolutionize the way we approach public-private partnerships, and working with new development to make sure that everybody's kind of paying their fair share and contributing to the system. And I think that we're going to see a lot of new projects coming in over the next few years, really being able to leverage, right, that development potential that the city has toward public benefit. And again, always, there's other organizations, other partners that we work with throughout the city that I think we've got plenty we'll be able to do, even if this bond doesn't pass.
Yeah, I think TJ was spot on. Even with this bond, we'll look for partnerships, but really it'll be a policy decision that the council will have to decide. They have a range of options to fund projects, but there is competing priorities from transit to housing to sidewalks. But really what you saw today would be significantly scaled down. And TJ's right, we've talked to you about the last 2 years we received because of your support and your work on maintenance of parks. We get an allocation now of 1 penny, which is roughly $8 million. So we'll still be making investments into the park system, but more from a capital maintenance perspective and not new development.
I'd like to make a comment as a member of the board who's leaving. I will still be doing all that I can do throughout the communities and the organizations to talk up this bond, and getting a copy of the slideshow where you have an opportunity to share that would be great. And also we have to remind people that during this pandemic, the park system has been a lifeline for many people.
Thank you. Stephen, would you mind sharing, and TJ, you probably know this figure too, I think it's really interesting, the number of projects that were in the 2014 bond versus the number that are in this bond, because even though it's a much bigger money number that we're asking for here, I think it's interesting just as far as how staff will be able to implement these projects, because that's a big concern, is how will we implement this? How will people maintain these projects? How can we handle it?
Yeah. A fair criticism is the speed in which the city delivers projects. In the last few years, we've gotten better at it. The last bond was $91.7 million, and we had 73 projects. So small projects still take a lot of time. You get community input, you have to do contracts and design and permitting. What you see here is more significant projects in some of Raleigh's underfunded neighborhoods. And what we had come before you, I guess it was almost 3 years ago, was a lot of maintenance. And what the council made a policy decision to say is we're not going to borrow money to fix our parks. We're going to borrow money to build new parks. So they awarded us the penny that we've talked about. That'll be those 70 projects. And we'll now be issuing debt when needed. Although there's 4 pennies of taxation on there, if revenues are good, the council does not have to put 4 pennies. They can go 3, and they can use other funding sources to offset the tax impact. So that's one thing that I want you to be sure about. But yeah, completely different. The last bond was reinvestment in capital maintenance. This is redevelopment and new construction for access and equity.
Anyone else have any questions, thoughts, comments? we're going to be hearing a lot more about this in the next couple months and moving into it. I know that I have been signed up to help promote it, and there were a couple other people on the board that were interested in being, key people, and I don't think they've been contacted. I've reached out to the chamber to remind them
Yes.
of the folks that we would like that had volunteered. So, but really, the whole board is going to be advocating, hopefully, and promoting the parks.
And I've asked the chamber to come next month. Their intentionality was to ramp up things more in the middle of October, to have a heavier push. So they have all the board members' names, but a few of you specifically. So I think we only have about a dozen presentations scheduled right now, with the volume which will increase significantly in October.
Okay.
The only plug I would make is all those projects you'll be a part of, so you'll be very busy the next 3 to 4 years, from community engagement to making sure staff are accountable and transparent in their work. So.
Just one note then, it sounds like a lot of this messaging will continue to be used. So just from a messaging standpoint, I would not be using the phrasing saying we're out of the pandemic, because we're not. There's a lot of suffering that continues locally and globally, and even the World Health Organization just issued something saying we're getting there, but we're not quite there. So I find that offensive. It's insensitive. So I would reframe that as we come out of the pandemic, our parks and amenities continue to be a source of solace for people, because they do, but people are still grieving. They're not over the loss and the trauma that we're still experiencing. I think we all need global mental health. So anyways, I just wanted to share that stuck in my head. So just a thought, nothing personal, TJ, I adore you, but just wanted to share that.
Great point.
Being
Well
sensitive
received.
to the community and people's struggles.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Thank you, TJ. Much appreciated. Before we move to the next item of the approval of the meeting minutes, I realized that I forgot to mention that, because he just feels like he's been a part of this for so long, this is the first meeting that Stephen has been sitting as director at this table. So welcome, good to have you. Yeah, and I just, it's been a month. It feels like you've been here forever. Yeah. So did everyone have a chance to look at the meeting minutes? They came today. Is there enough of an interest in making a motion to approve them, or should we defer to next month? I read through them. I could make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Marcia will make a motion. Great. I'll second. And the only thing is, I did notice in the public comment, I think in the header, it still said no comment, but then there were public comments underneath it, so just a minor thing. All those in favor, say aye of approving the minutes. Okay, and any against? Or just abstain? Okay. Okay, a couple of abstains. The motion passes. Looked like we had enough. Great, thank you. We will move on to the director's report. Stephen?
All right, just a few things. In August, we had a great event. I'll say the city had a great event on August 6th at John Chavis Memorial Park. Over 1,000 people came out over 3 hours to discuss the housing needs for the city. Multiple departments were involved. We had a table there. Our fee assistance program, they ran out of information. So definitely demonstrates the need in the greater community for the resources in the community. And I know our manager's office is working on one at a public event, which we will be a part of and likely be a host for homelessness. So, and that will be in October. We don't have a specific date, but we will share that with the board as well. The last two council meetings, we've had a few approvals. We had a contract. We received a grant from the state of North Carolina to do a cultural interpretive plan at Dix Park, and the grant was awarded to Cloud Guichon, which specializes in legacy and history of landscapes. And that was awarded last meeting. And then we had a large environmental services contract approved for Dix specifically for a couple of things. It's a brownfield. We continue to remediate small pockets of items on site, but we're also tearing down some of the older houses that have been in, they're the gray cottages that are unfit for public health. So, and they're full of lead paint and asbestos, unfortunately. The board has 3 nominees currently at the council table: Jeff Havner, Bob Edgerton, and April Love. Tomorrow you will see and meet Miss Taisha Hinton, and she's going to go through the dashboard that shows all the boards and commissions. You can see the demographic makeup for every board in the city and the vacancies that are needed, which I think is a fabulous tool. You'll have 3 vacancies, and they have 3 nominations. So here's to hoping we can fill some seats. And then finally, I'm just going to go through some random programs and events. We ended summer camp while you were away, and this year we had over 11,000, or roughly 11,000 registrations, and hosted approximately 3,000 kids this summer. It's a heavy lift for our staff, and they quickly pivot and turn right to the fall season. So, but they did an amazing job engaging children and families across all of Raleigh. We had the groundbreaking at the Gibson Play Plaza. We had a ribbon cutting at Fisher Street in John Stokes Park on Saturday, which was well attended and a lot of fun. For what you can do, kudos to Gary for being the project manager in a small little pocket. It was really, really cool. So kudos to the Housing and Neighborhoods Department, but for also Gary corralling all of us and getting us there. The Parks Bond campaign officially kicked off this week, so that's why I've asked the Chamber to come next month. Our Parks staff and our greenhouse planted 20,000 annuals, so that's a really cool thing. If you look online, if you don't know, we grow our own annuals, so when you drive by a park and you see annuals in front of a park sign, that's been grown by a park staff member, and we look forward to those getting in the ground this fall. I think even more impressive, Warren Davis, who is the center director at Southgate, the Sergeant Courtney T. Johnson Neighborhood Center, led an event that we gave away 2,800 backpacks, which is really an impactful program. So he's the same person that is going to lead with the teens, the coats collection. So fantastic talent amongst our staff. Just things that recently completed, a lot of lines on our greenways. Some people like them. Some people have other opinions of them. All around, I think it's a good thing for our greenway system. We have new rowing docks. If some of you have been around for a little while, the rowing community at Lake Wheeler has been an advocate for improvements, and we are going to be a partner and host the ACC championships at Lake Wheeler over a 5-year period, which is really cool. And let's see, tonight, the next 3 days, I think everybody wanted to plan a board meeting or engagement this week. So last night we had the Spurna meeting. Tonight we have this meeting, and there is a South Park Heritage Walk meeting. Tomorrow night we have our retreat, and there's another meeting on Saturday for the South Park Heritage Walk. So very busy. And then our partners in Housing and Neighborhoods are having an event at our park, at Lions Park, which is the Raleigh Neighborhood Exchange, which is a really cool program for families, and it starts at 4 p.m. on September 23rd. And then those are very positive things. On a much less light note, he's not here. I don't see him. He is the consummate gentleman, and at a public event, Scott Payne has announced his retirement. Oh. So, yes. Yep. I can't say enough about Scott. I won't say it now. I'll wait until next Friday for Giovanna and several members are planting a thank you and a celebration of Scott's long career, well beyond the city of Raleigh's impact. Nationally, Scott has had an influence on our profession and has been a mentor to a lot of us here in the room and in the audience. So Giovanna will send that information out to you. And we also have our retreat starting tomorrow night. It is at 5 Points. The agenda, you have a question?
I was just going to ask when he's retiring.
I'm sorry. October 1st.
Gee whiz. Okay.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yep.
Whoa.
2 weeks. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. I should have clarified that. Could have been 6 months from now. Yes. Whoever said too soon is spot on. But our retreat, I'm looking forward to it because we really haven't spent a lot of time together besides in a few of these meetings. Who we have is our Dr. Hamilton, who is head of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion office in the city. And her background is in geography. So she is thrilled to present to this board, and you have some homework, so please read it. And she has catered the training related to parks. So we do have standard template type training related to DEI, but I talked with her last week, and she's just thrilled to engage this board and be one of the first boards in the city that she sits down with and talks about the city's philosophy and some of the things that we're trying to do. Then we have Taisha Hinton, who is head of community engagement, and is going to talk. In between those two, we'll have dinner. Taisha will talk about community engagement board and some of the work they are doing and the advisory role of this board. And then in the morning, it's tours. So TJ and I believe Lauren, and myself and staff, we're going to go to 3 different parks and really talk about what you saw on the screen. We'll go to a park that hasn't been developed, talk with you and walk you through like that life of public engagement and design and construction. So the board is beginning to get briefed because you'll have a lot of work the next 3 to 4 years. We'll go to Chavis and maybe catch the tail end of that public engagement. So you might be able to drop in, share a few comments, and then we'll go across the street to Top Green and talk about the reimagining of Top Green Center to a cultural center. And then we'll end up at Method and we'll all have lunch. So.
Fantastic.
That's my report.
The Evite for that, the RSVP. Okay, I hope that people are able to attend, at least part of it. Great, thank you.
I'll probably be late, but I'll be there. Yeah.
So probably be late, but she'll be there tomorrow. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to hand it over to Beverly. I'm going to walk out. Next, we have committee reports. And I left my notes on my committee reports here for you. Thank you.
Take care. Parks Committee.
Thank you guys so much. Parks Committee met. First of all, I want to really talk about Method Days, which is what we partnered with in August in our Welcome to Raleigh series, and how amazing that was. I had never been to Method before, and I was able to sit down in a presentation of the history of Method, learn about the school, learn from somebody who attended that school, and it was so powerful. We had lunch out there. Denise is the director, and she is amazing. We got to watch as backpacks were being given out, and just to be a part of that, with all the different departments that were there within the parks, like it was everything that I could have ever wanted to be a part of. So loved it, loved it, and hope to be a part of more events like that. So when we came to our Parks Board meeting this month, Marcia was with me at Method, so we were able to just kind of bask in the glow of it because it was great. It was probably the most well-attended event that we have done, not for us, but just for us to be a part of. And hopefully in the future, we can do more events like that so that we can get our message out and then be a part of other boards. I know at Chavis, we were able to talk to the Police Advisory Board with Dr. Love, and we were able to talk to the Human Relations Commission. So it was really important, I felt, to use those opportunities to connect with other boards to help advocate and learn about what they're doing as well. So last one is in we wanted it to be in District E, but we wanted more so to be with the Raleigh Youth Council. So we moved it to our wants, and we're going to be in District A at Millbrook. But that's fine, and we'll hit all 5 districts next time, not a problem. But this will end our series for the year. So hopefully as we continue, we can do 5 different parks next year and learn more about our whole system, because I'm really excited about our retreat because I feel like that's something that I've wanted over the last 2 years. And I know because of COVID, we haven't been able to, but learning about the park system and being able to advocate and preach that to people, to residents of Raleigh is really important. So I'm really, really proud of our series this year as our pilot. So I hope to only get better from here. Thank you so much for being involved. And if you have not come out to one of our series, you should definitely be there at some point. So that's all. Thank you.
That's very exciting. Thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
So, all right, that's Parks Committee. And do you have anything? Do you know what's coming up on your agenda? future for people to be at meetings?
You mean of our series, or you mean for the specific meeting?
For the specific meeting.
We had talked about some, and now, of course, Ken, it's all escaping my brain. We last year had done the pay.
Oh, yeah,
but that fees, there it is. But that won't start this year till later, just because of the way. So we will have some of that, but we're going to learn about it in the future. So I don't have anything specific that, unless, please yell at me if I'm wrong, Ken. Am I missing something? Okay. Oh, okay.
Good evening, everyone. Ken Hissler, one of the assistant directors. Most of it was aligned with what the work plan is for the overall advisory board. There are some specific things that kick down to the Parks Committee, and one has been the Welcome Series. We're going to hopefully continue that into 2023. So right now we're pulling information on special events that we already have planned for that period of time and reveal that to the Parks Committee. We want to make sure we still represent some geographic areas across town. The fees and charges process is one that always falls into this committee. More than likely, that won't commence until after the new year, as we kind of go through a different process with the fiscal year budget. We know that that's going to shift a little bit, so that's the other one. And then the other one that TJ already probably spoke the most about from now until November, everybody on this board is going to be very busy with this little referendum thing we're trying to get passed across. So, and then the other ones really that Christina and Marcia have been looking at is just looking at those items that come out of the work plan.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Did you have
I was
something,
going to
David?
say one thing that we see in two different committees is how we partner with public-private partnerships for
Right.
greenways and parks. So, yeah, you heard TJ's name a lot. So what we thought we would do is have more of a
All right,
global.
and actually my Greenway committee report ties on that.
Okay, yep. So since both committees really are interested in that, we'll probably give a series of board presentations so everybody, it's a dynamic, growing city and things are coming at us from all direction. And TJ is the one, he's wrestling all of those items.
Right.
Glad you paused, because that related to that was the work of continuing to pursue. You guys were huge advocates as we were looking at the part-time pay plan. So that may switch from, and I know Lindsay brought some things our last meeting about in that conversation, really how can you guys continue not necessarily to advocate, but also to communicate? So you guys have networks that are incredibly far-reaching for us. So as we're continuing to pursue part-time employees, that is a year-round job for us, absolutely essential to the camp numbers that Stephen talked about. And then, yes, thank you, Stephen. That was the other one we talked about, Christine, was the private-public partnerships and how the advisory board is involved with those opportunities.
That's right. Well, and the Greenway Committee, I'll give that report, met this past Monday, September 12th. And as has been referenced, one of the items on the board's work plan is the public-private partnerships. And I think it came first to Greenways because there is a specific nonprofit that has been focused, Triangle Greenways Council. And they weren't able to come to this meeting, but that knowing that there was that entity in effect made it the logical place to start. We did have two nonprofits come to our meeting, and you'll all get the PowerPoint for that. That it was Triangle Land Conservancy, and we had a board member and a staff member talk with us about their projects and reach. They're triangle wide. They don't have a whole lot of projects specifically in Raleigh, but it was important to understand the way they work and look for the possibility for partnerships in the future. The other organization that we heard from was a brand new nonprofit, just gotten their 501c3, called Awake Cultural Pathways, and they're looking at how to bring sort of the Gen Z to the sort of digital experience to a greenway. And, you know, I think that's really cool on the one hand. On the other hand, our greenways are first and foremost parks, but you can have specific sites where it's something interesting and different and interactive in a digital way on your phone or something like that. We're not talking about transforming the Greenway into a digitally interactive experience. We were very careful to clarify that issue. But you can have, it can be, places along our parks and greenways, and to have people move in that way, because it does attract a different audience, and I think that was part of their point. So you'll get those PowerPoints, and I think it'll be something we'll be talking about more. And so that's the Greenways, sustainability, wildlife, and urban trees.
Yes. We met in August, and we've already had our meeting for September. So we talked about invasive species. I tell you folks, if you get a real education at our committee meetings. We had this most recent meeting, our September meeting, was a wonderful presentation. Chris was one of the facilitators. Charles, I'm sorry, Charles. One of our presentation was about monarch butterflies, and Raleigh is a monarch butterfly city with more monarch butterfly way stations than any other city in North Carolina. 80 way stations and more coming.
81.
81. And the city is growing phenomenal amounts of butterfly weed and milkweed for to give to people to get them out for more pollination. So it's exciting. We've had more folks attending, just interested citizens that are coming to the committee meetings, and one person who came for her third committee, everybody introduces themselves, and she said, the reason I come is because I learn things. And if you're a Parks Board member who's interested in learning things, show up to committee meetings. We'll learn things. Anyway, there's a lot we can do and a lot to become aware of in order to be a successful advocate, like about the butterflies and the invasive species. So right now, the city is dampening the bright lights to support the migration of birds. And if you want to be an advocate for the feathered neighbors, then turn off your bright lights and try to get your neighbors to do that as well. So anyway, that's my soapbox. Yeah, I tell you what, folks, you're welcome to serve on the committee. We don't even have an initiation process.
No hazing. Thank you, Marcia. Devereaux Meadow Park, I think that we've gotten all the updates we're going to get on that today. And Arts Commission.
I have stepped down as liaison, so I'm going to make another, but I do want to point out that the Medal of Arts Award ceremony is coming up very soon, and I'd encourage you to go. I hope to go myself, so I will freelance that item out to you and reiterate my invitation, because there are one or two more people here than there were at the last meeting, inviting the next person who would like to be liaison to the exciting Arts Commission to step forward. And anybody here is going to be younger than I am, so a younger person should fill this role right now.
Well, I do think it is part of what we do as parks, recreation, and cultural resources, and so it is an important component. But thank you. BPAC, Christina is gone, and has anybody else been to a BPAC meeting? Now, we did have Nick Neptune, who is on the BPAC, chair of BPAC maybe, at the Greenway committee meeting. So we're cross-fertilizing, and I think it's important too that some of these groups come to hear as well as us sending out to all. So that is something that I'm looking forward to encouraging in the coming year. And Jen left me her Historic Cemeteries Commission report, I think. That would be Charles Craig. Oh, Charles is going to do it. Oh, no, she left me Historic Resources and Museum Advisory. I knew she'd left me one of them.
Good evening, everyone. I am Charles Craig, one of the park superintendents with Raleigh Parks. I would like to share with you some exciting things that's happening at the cemetery. The first thing I would like to share with you, we're very excited about next month, the month of October. We will be planting 50 different trees of different species at Mount Hope Cemetery. We're super excited about the next generation of trees to come to this historic space. I do want to share that the advisory board is one member down. We have one member to step down, and we're looking forward to the recruitment process and sharing more information as we receive it with this board. Lastly, I would like to share with you the board is very adamant and very excited about producing a cemetery tour. One of the goals is to do a tour this fall. Whenever that date is established, I'd be more than happy to share that date with you. And if you're able to attend, you're more than welcome to do so. That concludes my report. Our next meeting will be on next week, Thursday, September 22nd at 5:30 p.m. at the Tucker's house.
Can you tell us when the tree planting is? And can you also, as we talk about monarch butterflies and and growing our own, are they all native species trees or what?
Absolutely. We'd be so happy to share that information with you.
Okay. And do you have a date for planting?
Well, our planting window is going to open around October 15th, and we will let you know exactly what day it'll be.
Okay. And is it staff doing it, or is it volunteers too?
Oh, we're gonna try to get as many people as we can to help out.
Okay. That we would all be interested in.
We all need help digging holes to put trees in. So yeah, bring it on.
And actually, a friend of mine developed a bicycle tour of the cemeteries in Raleigh, starting at Oberlin Cemetery, and we went to and Terry Harper met us at several of the locations and helped describe it, but we biked to every one of them, and so he might be a good candidate to be on the cemetery commission because he put that together.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dick's Leadership Committee, okay. This is where I'll give you Jennifer's report. Gibson Play Plaza, great turnout. I know that Lindsay was there, I was there, Stephen was there, everybody was invited, the whole city. There were lots of, and it is 100% construction documents have been submitted, and they're expecting the permit approval on that. One thing that people forget about our projects as parks projects is we have to go through the same permitting process that with the city of Raleigh that you as a home builder or anybody else does. And it can sometimes take a while. It's a 27-month construction schedule. And there's a Week County grant for $1 million for some site improvements, the Hunt Drive Greenway connection, parking, ADA parking connection to the playground. I guess these are the things that the Wake County grant is going to fund. Connections to Umstead Drive sidewalk. So there are a lot of incremental, smaller improvements that are happening, I guess.
Campus is so not accessible, and we do get complaints about the events are not ADA accessible. So what we'll focus on very intentionally is permanent fixes, and then there are like mats and ramps that you can procure and lay out for events, so that grant will help cover that.
And then apparently there's a building and site analysis happening. The UNC finance people are doing, they're leasing up office spaces. This doesn't quite make
No.
sense when you
Yeah.
haven't been to the meeting.
No, I can help. So the council funded, when we bought the campus, we reviewed the buildings at a high level, and DHHS is on schedule to move in 2025, so we are going to inherit as many buildings on one campus that are in our park system. There's 1 million plus on the campus, there's 1 million plus in our park system. So architecturally, they're looking at all the buildings, and then UNC Development Finance Institute is actually put together, they are a group out of UNC that looks at helping cities and towns. What do you do with your buildings, your best and highest use? And instead of us hiring a private firm to do it, we hired the university to do it, and they also did the Morgantown campus. So they took the Morgantown campus and said, here's what you should do with this hospital campus, and we thought we could build off their success there. So, yeah.
Great. And I assume most people know DHSS is moving to Blue Ridge Road. They're building a new building there. So farmers market, yeah, there are a whole lot of issues in that assessment, but I don't think there. And then the assessment's being done around the entire campus to evaluate the current status and the return on investment on fixing them up, costs for maintenance, renovations, and more next month on this. I think they need to be gone, and we need a park. That's it. So, and then Historic Resources and Museum Advisory Board. On October 5th, there will be a volunteer banquet at Moore Square. They've had the summer concert series at Pullen Fletcher Park. Programming is back on track at most sites. And their executive report was accepted for review. Had a great year, lots of accomplishments, increased attendance at events, that not surprising. And the board approved their new bylaws and responsibilities. That's that. Okay, then we come to nomination committee report. So,
Sorry.
Our new chair is Beverly Clark, and our new vice chair is Chris Pereira. Congratulations.
well, thank you very much.
So you all will take the ranks at the next meeting. Well,
Okay. Okay. And chair comments. Jennifer didn't leave any, and I don't really have anything other than I think we've got a really important bond issue coming up, and I think the more we can talk about it in every way we can, and a positive spin. Is it this exact bond I would have put forth? No, or you, or you, or you. I think, but the consensus is compromise, and that's what we have to look at it in that regard, and that it moves our city forward with more amenities and more things that people need and use. So I'm excited about that.
We have some items for you. The educational materials that the city is allowed to distribute is just fact-based, where the project's at, how much it costs. We'll give that to you at the retreat tomorrow, so you can hand those out. Yep. And anytime you need them, we got thousands of them. So.
Although I won't be at the retreat, I'd like to get copies of that because I'll be advocating for
I have
it.
you down from Wednesday when you told me to give you.
It's been a pleasure serving for the past 6 years. The young people that just came on board, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. I know that you'll do your very best, and I wish you all well.
And we want you to be thinking about people that you've worked with that would be good to be in the queue for being on the board, because I think that's always. Your history and your experience is unlike anyone else's, and I think that continuing to have that kind of staggered points of view makes us a stronger and better board. So thank you for all that you have offered and given. And I think that we can adjourn the meeting.
Comments.
Oh, board comments. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Board comments, anyone?
This is more of a suggestion, but TJ, great presentation earlier, but I think one of the things that stood out to me was how much bigger the number appears to be, and I wonder if it would help if we had like another way, like another slide or additional bullet points that help break that down, like dollar amount per population, since Raleigh's grown so much since the 2014 one. And maybe, I don't know how you'd be able to work in inflation, but maybe making that 4 cents not seem quite as big.
Good comment. Anybody else have any other?
I don't remember if it was the Parks Committee meet. I think it was at the Parks Committee meeting. We were talking about that board attendance is one of the metrics that's shared with City Council when it's time for a person to get reappointed. So if you've missed a lot of meetings, that's a strike against you getting reappointed. And one of the things we talked about was asking board members serve on different committees and letting the council also know about involvement with with committee activities as a way to let City Council know how board members have been engaged in their service as board members. So it came up that it might be a good thing to mention in board comments. So I'm floating that balloon.
Also, probably coming to these park events outside of,
their participation, I guess what Lindsay's saying is participation can be judged in a variety of ways. And committees are one part, attending other events is another part, because we do all have different compelling responsibilities that conflict with certain things and not other things. So I think that's one piece of it, but I think it's more than just I think board attendance at board meetings is job one, and then
regarding that, you all can specify that for the board, and you all can talk to the board members, and you can bring that up at the retreat. But when I report back to the city clerk, she only specifies for board attendance. So she does not ask for committee attendance or any of that information. So she only specifies for board meeting attendance. So I only report what she specifies for. So that's just for that.
Beverly, an example would be is if you had a board member that only made 50% of the meetings but went to like every city event, you could reach out to the council member and be like, hey, this board, they're active, but they missed some meetings, but they're out in the community. So, but Javon is bound by one metric. Did they come or did they not? So we have to defer to the board to communicate that to council. And I would probably get a call as well from the council member to say, are they active? So.
I think the community appreciates when we do attend those different events, because I was over at several different things, and they tell me how much they appreciate my coming out to be present at the events. I have not been to Roberts Parks in years, and I was there to one of their events recently, and it was really nice to see. And I was welcomed to be there.
And I think it's important to be mindful that we are there, especially when we have our name tags on and everything, to listen to the community as much as to share with them. And so it's a point of contact that people have that they wouldn't otherwise come to a meeting, but it's an easier way to have that point of contact. So, yeah.
I forget which activity it was, whether it was method or some other thing, but one staff person said, they had on my name tag, and they said, "Thank you for coming. We don't see, we usually have board members that show up for things like this." And she was just so thrilled to have a conversation. Oh, it was at the Method. It was at Method. One of the longtime Parks employees who works in the office, she's not in the community center. She said, "We don't ever see board members showing up at these kind of events." So anyway, it's a good thing to do.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we can call this meeting adjourned. A motion? We need a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we go.